Good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the penultimate session of 33rd Annual Conference of Agriculture Economics Research Association, India. I request all the delegates to kindly settle down for this important policy dialogue on transforming agri-value chains, emerging frontiers for agribusiness. I request Dr. Mamta Pradhan Madam to take over the proceedings and conduct this policy dialogue on transforming agri-value chains.
Sorry, good morning and welcome to the panel discussion. Before we set the panel to set going, may I request Dr. Joshi to please welcome Professor Mahendra Dev, and then we can proceed with the panel discussion. With your permission, Dr. Joshi, should we start or do you want to take over and then Dr. Mani? Are the slides uploaded? Good morning once again. I think it's a huge pleasure, it's an honor, and it's a privilege that I'll set the context for today's panel, which is on transforming agri-value chains, and we'll be looking at the emerging frontiers for agribusiness. And it's a huge privilege that we are doing this panel under two chairpersons, Professor Mahendra Dev and Dr. Joshi. At the outset, if you permit me, the chairpersons, I would like to say that if we include Professor Dev, and had there been Professor Rangarajan and with Dr. P.K. Joshi, I think that would cover a span of the value chain of agri-economic development policy in India. So it's a huge, huge privilege that we are doing this panel discussion under their chairpersonship. I'm also very honored that we have with us Dr. G. Narendra Kumar, who is the Director General for the National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, and all our esteemed panelists from different departments. So, as I said, this policy dialogue is on transforming agri-value chain and the emerging frontiers on agribusiness. So the way we are trying to look at it is through the lens of the role of agri-food system transformation towards economic growth and development. And there are two schools of thought, the one for the structural change or for the structural transformation. I think most of you are aware of the Nobel laureate syndrome of Lewis model of 1954, which kind of thought of that there is one low productive sector which was somewhat assumed to be agriculture, and then there is a high productive sector, and the reallocation of resources from the low productive to high productive kind of propels the overall productivity. Primarily the labor or the key resources moving from traditional, that is agriculture sector, to modern manufacturing or eventually service sector, etc. The thinking behind was that, the wealth accumulation, innovation, or the productive growth, that is the rising income, kind of seemed to happen in the modern sector. So the faster the labor can migrate to modern sector, the faster is the development that can happen. But here as a panel, I think what we are trying to focus is on the second approach to growth and development, which we are calling it as the fundamentals approach. If like factors like human capital, technology, institutions actually can affect all sectors and can raise the productivity, it can bring in growth. And agriculture is no different as a sector, and that brings to the second Nobel laureate schools model, which talked about agriculture, if it brings in technological innovations, can lead to growth and productivity. But what these two schools of thoughts kind of were missing is basically the link between the producers and the consumers. So there's this whole value chain in between that kind of is very materially important as growth drivers and development outcomes, because we know that the farmers produce, they don't directly feed the consumers. So we have to acknowledge that between the producers and the consumers, there is this whole value chain of activities which are all linked to agribusiness kind of takes place. So there comes the third school of thought, which we kind of will be focusing on, which is based on agri-value chain, which is kind of the source of growth and development. And this is where, in this whole agri-value chain, is where agribusiness kind of is ideally located. So from the early process of development to the current worlds, once if you look at all the developing countries, whether there's increase in the human capital or there's increase in income, etc., you see that all of them tend to be going towards the structural change is towards the agriculture value change. So human capital, its role in determining both within and across sector productivity. So these are some of the new developing countries that are kind of focusing on where there is innovation, where there is gender, where there is agribusiness. Of course, the new issues of market failures, etc., kind of shape structural change. So theoretically and empirically, there are a lot of appealing stories which actually kind of then miss the agri-value chain transformation story. A World Bank is here, so I'm very, very pleased to this is our thinking. I think in this whole world of agri-value chain and agribusiness, I think the World Bank Development Report of 2028 kind of emphasized the whole agri-value chain, which was kind of a precursor for agribusiness. So it in fact was the spur for agribusiness, and wherein in that report they kind of highlighted that agriculture offers great promise for growth, poverty reduction, and environmental services. So when we talk about agriculture value chain and where agribusiness comes in, so agriculture value chain actually intermediates between what happens in the first farm gate, right from the range of processing to storage to transport to wholesaling, etc. And in all these activities, agribusiness kind of plays a very, very central role. So that brings us to a very simple theory of change where there is inputs, there is outputs, outcomes, and then there is an impact pathway. And in across all, whether it's inputs or it's outputs or the whole impact pathway of a sustainable development, agribusiness is very, very entrenched across all the levels. So specifically, and when we are talking about a very equitable, sustainable agri-value chain where agribusiness is kind of going to take a very central role, we also have to take into considerations the women's participation labor force, what is the income and the distribution, what types of structure agriculture product is being a kind of marketed or sold. Look at all the number of supermarkets and the restaurants that have been emerged in the country. While we are talking about agriculture value chain and the agribusiness in the centrality of it, three silent revolutions are taking place at the same time. There is retail revolution, there is quiet revolution, which is the midstream with these changes in storage and logistics, and there's the food service revolution. And agribusiness being at the helm of it kind of also have to deal with a very, very complex marketing strategy, which we call the demand side of 5 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion, people. And you'll see how it is so deeply entrenched in terms of what the consumers are eating, the processed food which has taken over the market. And look at across the globe, it is whether it's the footballers or the film stars which are also kind of promoting this processed food. So this is something that the agribusiness have to also kind of start looking into it and addressing all these complexities. So earlier we used to talk about food desert. Now we are talking about nutrient desert, and that's where agribusiness will play a central role. With this, I stop here and I hand over the panel to both the chairperson, Professor Mahendra Dev and Dr. Joshi. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is an important topic, agri value chains and agri business. And we start the panel right away with first, who is the first one? Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mamta, for excellent introduction of the topic. Very important topic. We have in fact, we initially thought that we will have question answer in the panel, but there is a presentation, I was told, and Dr. Benedict de Le Berry, who is the lead economist in the World Bank, and she will make a brief presentation. But with that, we would like to hear from you how can social protection systems be designed to complement agribusiness and value chain development so that vulnerable households benefit from transformation. So I request you to complete your presentation in 6 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thanks to IFPRI for inviting me. I trained as an agricultural economist, and when I was doing my postdoc, I came often to ICAR-NAARM here in Hyderabad. So it's very nice to be back after 30 years. There's been a lot of changes, and there's been a lot of changes in the rural areas. So as a matter of context, and most of you know these statistics, work in agriculture is still risky work. It's still work that doesn't pay a lot. The prevalence of what we call working poverty, that is jobs that make less than the international poverty line, is the highest in the agricultural sector. The workforce is becoming feminized, and India has huge programs, huge safety nets that target these workforce, right? And the main ones are the workfare program in NREGA, the public distribution system, some programs such as PM Kisan that address some of the farming risk, and then there's a plethora of state-led programs, also programs that target specific groups such as tribal people, scheduled castes. Some are mostly focused on individuals, some target communities. So there is a very strong base. Then, of course, India has also this incredible identification system with Aadhaar, the digital payment infrastructure. But it's still fragmented. The coverage and the adequacy of benefits are not quite aligned to the changes of the agricultural wealth. And I want to focus for a minute on the basic conception about work and social protection. What we're seeing overall is that, I mean, workers are not in the tradition, more and more workers are not in the traditional sort of employer-employee contracts, right? And they have short-term arrangements. They may work in different places, have different kind of jobs at different times of year. And the way, you know, the formal social protection system have been developed, they rely very much on the agency of the employer and the employee to contribute. And that's becoming more and more obsolete, right? And India has some experience with the welfare boards in fisheries in Kerala, the construction workers. But for example, for people that do agricultural work in one season, migrate and do construction work somewhere else, these instruments are not adequate, right? And so we need to sort of evolve the way we think about social protection to be able to help household and individual better manage risks. And so in the rural areas, I want to emphasize three main agendas. One is the sort of protection to production, right? It's about helping farmer household manage climate shocks. And some of the covariate shocks, some of the market shocks also, right? We've seen with the tariffs and all of that. And building on the sort of graduation models that were trying to lift the ultra poor to, let's say, less poor. And now I think the challenge is how do we bring those people a step up the ladder and help them insert into those value chains. And here, of course, the experience of the self-help groups provides a very strong base. Then there's the agenda of helping people move to better jobs. And that, in terms of the social protection, it's about the portability of benefits, right? It's about not making the benefit linked to one sort of job relationship, but linked to a person and have accounts that they can carry around. And I think there, as Mamta mentioned, there is an agenda around nutrition, right? Right now, India is facing the double burden of undernutrition, which is still there. And we know stunting is a tax on the human capital and the productivity of people. But there is also a burden of over and malnutrition in the sense of increasing NCDs, obesity, micronutrient deficiency, that maybe there is an opportunity for the PDS to at least not contribute to, but maybe help address. And then aging is happening fast. And aging in rural areas has specific characteristics. And we need to think about the financing. I mean, there is a demographic opportunity for India right now, but it's closing fast. And so we need to be creative about the financing strategy and the kind of services, because aging in dignity is not only about money. It's about your social connection and your community-based. And we know that community-based long-term care is probably the most cost-efficient. So I want to throw at you a bunch of frameworks that we are discussing in my team in the bank as we try to work with Government of India on, social protection for Viksit Bharat, especially in the rural areas. So as I mentioned, there is a lot of experience with the self-help groups and the sort of Jivika kind of model that Bihar and the Ministry of Rural Developments are trying to export to other states. But I think if you just do that, you sort of reach a plateau, because to integrate in the market and to help people access those agricultural value chain, we need to go back to a kind of local development area-based model. And maybe the unit there is about districts, it's about the market system development, it's about integrating natural resource management. And to me, it's about, building up or converging the kind of GIA programs that the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment reads, the sort of focus on the aspiring districts, together with the aggregations, right? You have productive cooperatives that are a way to get into agri-value chains. They could also become ways to set up saving instruments, to set up, health insurance cooperatives. So by improving the production capacity, you improve the consumption, and maybe you can build on that base to improve the social risk management. At the same time, we need to think about climate change and anticipate and mitigate climate shocks. So here, this is what we call at the bank the adaptive social protection, and India. So there are 4 building blocks around institution financing, information systems, and programs. And of course, India has very strong building blocks in all these 4 pillars. But again, they are fragmented. The disaster risk financing and all the sort of pre-shock contingent financing is an agenda to develop. We are working with Odisha and Kerala in sort of linking the disaster response systems and the payment system of the social safety net, because ultimately it's about helping people in more resilient, productive livelihood before the shocks, and responding as fast as we can, sometimes even before we know the shocks will matter, so that people don't fall in poverty traps, right? And so a lot of the social protection, the traditional social protection, is about idiosyncratic shocks, right? It's about losing your jobs, falling sick. But more and more shocks are hitting a region or a whole country or the world, right? Like the pandemic. And we saw a lot of sort of innovative thinkings during the response to COVID. And the government used their social safety nets and their payment distribution to push out benefits. And some cities innovated, and somehow there's been a bit of a lull after COVID, and I think everybody was just so relieved to have escaped. But the climate change shocks are only going to increase, right? The displacement, temperature are increasing. The nature of crops is going to change. So we need to keep urgency on that agenda. On the labor mobility, so I think here there is an agenda about moving the system, which is mostly place-based, to a portable system. And again, the One Nation, One Ration card is a great example of that, but it's probably not gone to its full potential. And one agenda is about simplification, right? I mean, India has Aadhaar, you have the GPI, you have networks of banking correspondents, of ASHA, Anganwadi workers, extension workers, but it's very complicated to access those systems, right? So there is a human-centered agenda to that one. On nutrition, I know I'm running out of time, so just a pitch for, as I said, trying to address micronutrition deficiencies and trying to focus the public distribution system on those who need it the most, so children and women. And just to close with the aging, the rural world is aging, and we have quite a few places where we have isolated elderly. At the same time, India is trying to develop the care economy. So again, the SAGs and some of these group-based cooperative could provide a basis for both supporting the elderly, helping them maintain social and productive aging, and we know they are cost efficient, right? So there are experiences about how to think the financing of these models. So I'll just stop here. The last point I may make is that India has a tradition of using technology in a very frugal way. Many people even, I mean, not so much among women, but everybody has a smartphone. I think the big agenda is to, one, do these things in a less bureaucratic, simpler way to approach, and then complement with a human touch, right? So leverage these networks of productive associations of human development services to help people get into those services, because right now the documentation and the bureaucratic process are quite heavy. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. I think she has touched the three agenda, 3-point agenda. One, protection to productive production, and second, labor mobility, third, aging. On some of the social security and all, the recent labor codes, the 4 labor codes, they take care some of the like gratuity, and even gig workers, they're planning some social security. So that probably will take care. And the social protection for rural prosperity is very important, and India has many social protection programs, and from employment, food, nutrition, several things. So and technology, of course, they're going to use. So she says we should be more inclusive, the technology. So with this, we'll start the discussion. Yeah. So we have, instead of panel speaking, so we thought we'll have some questions and answers thing. So I start with Dr. Satyasai. He's, all of you, former CGM, NABARD. So my question is basically, because you have worked in NABARD and the rural and agri-finance. So what policy innovations could improve the affordable and timely credit across value chains, and particularly for small and small holders, and also some discussion on FPOs. Yeah. So 2 minutes for.
I think Maggie Revolution. Thank you, Chairman Mahendra Dev sir and Joshi sir and other dignitaries on and off the dais. As Dr. Mamta was telling, there are quite 3 revolutions quietly happening. Because of that, we need to change the way we look at agriculture and how we organize the agriculture production and other activities within the sector. Accordingly, when we talk about sectoral changes, even financing modes and financing approach also should change. So here it is, we got used to deal with multiple small ticket loans. Now the same way of financing and approaching the funding the producers and other actors, I think is not going to help us. I think we have to have a fresh and wholesale change in our lookout. But the traditional problems which we have in agriculture financing. They are like information asymmetry, and then rule-based or template-based financing. All these things, I think they have to lead way to innovative financing. So innovative ideas, I think, need innovative financing. Otherwise, I think they cannot go forward. And another thing is we are looking at individual actors as such, but we should have a holistic approach in dealing with this aspect. I think that is another thing. And apart from this, financing is not exclusive from the real sector happenings. So the bankers and this value chain actors, I think they should have a sort of collaborative approaches. Otherwise, they will be in isolation and it will not lead to the synergies. That is another point I would like to make. And we hardly have any policy leverage in this sector. We have one price variable, which is interest rates, and other one is certain norms, etc. We can tweak in here and there. These are the two things. But overall, I think the approach should be not on specific policy variable, but how the policy, whatever we can work, the ecosystem, I think, which we develop at the template we develop, that would decide how the effective financing can happen. For example, Professor Mahendra was telling FPOs. The FPOs is they can be real nodes in the entire value chain, and that can change the game. And already several FPOs are doing that, but not on the scale. And we hardly hear one or two Sahyadri or maybe someone like that thing. Otherwise, we don't hear the replication to that happening much. And even health of most of the FPOs also in problematic situation as we learn from the ground. But FPOs have the real potential to be a good value chain players. And they can be bulk lenders, then that would reduce the transaction cost for the bankers and that would share the risks, and bankers can share the risk with FPOs as a bulk lender. But this requires changes in the regulatory norms and other norms we have to tweak. And similarly, if an FPO gives a bulk lending, then that particular farmer may not be eligible for the individual loans and concession rates. We call internet subvention. And then we have to look at this holistically. We cannot deprive the from individual actor from this. And another thing is the entire value chain, when we are dealing with corporates, FPOs, individuals, I think each one has a different set of norms when banks deal with. So when we combine them together and look at an integrated finance, I think these norms also we had to tweak in and make them integrated too in the whole chain. I think these are some of the things which we can think of, and the technology adoption, of course. I think unless we can track whatever happening within the value chain, I think the financing cannot happen effectively. And as such, our understanding of value chains at present is still elementary, I can say it. So a lot of things we need to learn together about value chains, and which are presently fragmented and not really happening the way they should happen. And we cannot call one input distributor as a value chain. Some financing an input distributor, financing one processor cannot be called a value chain finance. So these type of things we have to see in future when we want to deal with value chain in a holistic way. And one more thing is we have to look at the stakeholder. One last point. When we see the stakeholder pyramid, farmers are at the bottom, and different layers are there. And we are mostly tweaking our policies with respect to one of the nodes, but not the entire gamut of stakeholders. This is another approach we need to change. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next one, Dr. Smita Shirohi. She is the MS Swaminathan Chair, National Professor ICAR NIP. So the question is, you worked in at international level also. So what role can international partnerships play in accelerating innovations in India's agri-value chains, and how can policies strengthen such collaboration?
Thank you, sir. It's my privilege to be part of such a distinguished panel. Coming to the international partnerships, in today's world, the role of international partnerships or collaborations need no emphasis. In fact, in Mahabharata, when Krishna was asking Pandavas to build alliances before the war, he was not really talking about just forging friendships, but he was talking about building a strategic ecosystem of complementary strengths. So these partnerships, international partnerships, are not only about funding and diplomacy, but it's about connecting the capability, capital, compliance, and co-creation. But what do we need for that? How do we do it? So first and foremost, for the agri-business, what I feel is, first thing is that we need to build innovation awareness. If we are aware, then only we are going to partner in something. So something with the first stage knowledge is very essential. So institutional scanning of global innovations, I would say, is something which is important. And policy ask from, I would propose a policy ask. Maybe we can talk about a global agricultural innovation observatory, which could be perhaps anchored in ICR, or NAARM would take the lead to anchor such thing, so that to assess and disseminate the globally relevant innovations which can be used for India. That is the first thing for partnerships. Second point, I would say, to enable access to platforms. So once we know what is there, what is where, people don't know how to access that, how to forge those kind of partnerships. So even if opportunities exist, we should have our own institutions which should be able to facilitate the entrepreneurs. It's going on in the private sector. A lot of it is going in the private sector, but in private sector, we know what is happening is it doesn't become a public good. So they do it at one level, at their own level for their own companies. But to make it more generalized, where people can benefit from it, maybe what we need is something like a NASCOM for agriculture sector. NASCOM is essentially now dealing with connecting the IPT and BPT firms. So we would need some kind of an institution or some kind of a platform where more and more agri startups can be connected, or these innovation firms can be connected to the world. Of course, then we need to strengthen our domestic actors. For that, we have a lot of schemes. Schemes are by MOSPI. We have Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sampada Yojana, and several other schemes are there, which are there. But the point is not various schemes. It's just to connect the dots between the various schemes, so that the real benefit can come in a synthesized way. That is one point. And I would say to promote co-creation, not just technology transfer. So this is the time where even the West is looking towards us. In fact, when I was in Brussels during a COVID time, there was a lot of interesting conversation which we were taking place with European Union, saying that how you have been able to manage distribution of your food despite of these lockdowns. So they have also a lot to learn from new agri-business models emerged during that time, home delivery of milk, so many other things. That is something which is again where we need to co-create this technology. And then I would also say that when we are doing a lot of FTAs now with governments of various countries, but these FTAs should not be just a place for market access, but also for innovation. So can we think about having clauses where we have innovation, focus on agri-innovation, not just agri-market access? So these are some of the points which I would just like to say. So it's not about, recently we had, ICR has signed an MOU with Brazil, which is on METRI 2.0 to foster agri-innovations between Brazil and India. But somehow we don't know. This was, I think this was in September, and it was mentioned that this is the second edition of India-Brazil partnership in that area in agri-innovations. But what happened in the first one, I'll just conclude. So what happened in the first one is something which we really don't know. So it's not really about just signing of MOUs. It's about building the mechanisms, mindsets, and the markets that will ultimately help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move to Dr. K. Srinivas. He's the principal scientist, ICAR-NAARM. So it's basically, from your work on incubating and supporting agri startups. So what are the institutional changes and policies would be helpful for the entrepreneurs, particularly early stage, and also access finance and scale their solutions across value chains?
Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. Basically, when I talk about how the startups, at least at early stage startups, which are going to the field which we call normally from technology level 3 to 9, we need a lot of funding at that particular point. That is the basic thing which require. Besides that, just as Dr. Smita Sirohi just told, we need to have a co-creation at that particular time with definitely with a better scientific institution which we have with the startups. And that comes with the incubators, that comes with some sort of accelerators. These are all the things. But for all these things, definitely financing is required. And despite the fact that India has actually Indian startups have actually raised around $11.5 billion in 2024, but still that there is a huge gap in this. The another point when we talk about the startup, when we are going to scale up, is the deficiency of the working capital. And for that, if we go to approach to any financial institutional financing system, lot of traditional collaterals are being asked, which is a very, very big problem. So there need to be some policy change. Definitely, there has been a policy change in last few years, but some policy change is there. Apart from that, we need to create, like as Dr. Smita has told, a NASCOM type of organization, which can make the startups from the bottom level to top at a different stage. They need different types of help, sometimes financial, sometimes scientific or technological finance. And here we need to look into our IP transfer systems, which are there, definitely are there, but need to continuously improve upon looking into the present situation. So, in overall, we have to have, finally, I can conclude in saying that definitely we need to have a co-creation and a strong partnership between academia, research institution, and the innovative persons, what we call as a startups. Number one, need to have financing at different level with different types of conditions to be given, and make financing more easier for the startups to survive. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to Professor Najib, Vice Chancellor, SKU AST. So this is on, geographically constrained regions like the Himalayas. So what policy interventions can improve value chain competitiveness in ecologically fragile or geographically constrained like Himalayas?
Thank you, sir. It is an honor for me to be on this distinguished panel here. Quickly, I will set the context about this 3 days conference and about this panel discussion happening here. And I would say that since independence, agriculture has made tremendous strides in this country, and we have grown significantly. And we have brought this country out of utter hunger and poverty since independence. So I will not go into the details, but what I just believe, sir, that all the progress which we have made so far in agriculture is just around 15 to 20% of the total potential we have in this nation. 80 to 85% of the potential in agriculture in this country is still unrealized. And I believe our discussion is moving towards that. So I will just quote only two references to that, why it is happening. Say, for example, the potential is not yet realized. Is because if we see one small figure, that the agricultural exports from this country are around 50 billion US dollars only. And if we take a small country like Netherlands, which is very, very small compared to us, it is, exports are more than 100 billion US dollars and is the second largest producer of the food in the world. So I will not go again into the details why it is there, but two important limitations are there. One is the technology and another is the agri-value chains. So therefore, in order to realize that potential, we have to do it. And then building these agri-value chains at the country level, we have the challenges, for example, that small land holding capacities and poor infrastructure. But if you go to the mountains, it is still more challenging in mountains. We have both the challenges and the opportunities. And in order to build those competitive value chains, we have to understand what are the opportunities in the Himalayas. And I would say that Himalayas in this great nation present a different context of the agriculture, be it the physiography there in the agriculture, the biodiversity, or those niche crops which we produce in the Himalayas. If we talk about the Jammu and Kashmir only, everything we produce is very niche and specific, be it the apples, the walnuts, the almonds, the cherries, the saffron, the kala zira, the MAPs, the apricots, that Kashmir lal mirch, those cereals, for example, the rice we produce is very different from the rice from elsewhere. The specialty fibers, the pashmina we produce there. The wool at the country level is all coarse wool, but then we produce that fine merino wool. The silk we produce here, but then it is biwool and silk. Then those products, those kind of the handicrafts, everything is very different. Even many of the products and many of the areas are by default organic. And so therefore, building those value chains concept is really very different. And challenges, I would say, are more difficult and more varied in those Himalayas. Besides remoteness, which we understand, the fragile ecosystems which we have in Himalayas, those landslides, soil erosions, and climate vulnerability, small landholding capacities, and whatnot. But then I was wondering, sir, for the information of the House here, that when we talk about the policies, Jammu and Kashmir, UTF Jammu and Kashmir has taken a lead at the country level to put a policy in place which will help us transform primary agriculture into secondary and commercial agriculture. Globally, it is known that a country wherein the primary agriculture has a more share to its economy is a poor economy. So years, since independence, our agriculture used to be dominated by primary agriculture. That's why we are a poor economy in Jammu and Kashmir. But then, in place we have a policy. We call it HADP, Holistic Agriculture Development Program, wherein the focus is that how to transform primary into secondary agriculture, and in between building those value chains. It is basically a 5,000 crore project, and top of that is 2,000 more is a 7,000 crore project. And I would say that is now becoming a model at the national level as to how do we improve the productivity, how do we build the capacities of processing, value addition, creating jobs, creating wealth, and creating at the national level. At the same time, quickly, at the same time, we have to also move from those commodity specific to kind of regional specific. For example, Kashmir in itself have a brand, or Himalayan is a brand. So I believe there is tremendous potential and challenge. Thank you very much.
I think you'll have, yeah. Thank you. So now we move on to the second question. Probably Dr. Joshi will take over.
We start with the second round. This will be much briefer than the previous one. So you take less time than the previous one. So we'll again start. We'll start with this time Dr. Smita because of the gender balance. Smita, you have done extensive work on this partnership, institutional issues. You have global experience also. So based on your experience, what institutional reforms would help India to adopt new technologies more quickly across value chains?
Thank you, sir. Sir, the institutional reforms are required at various levels. I would say to begin with, since agriculture, when we are talking about agriculture, when we see the models like the helix model, which is being followed abroad, university, research, government, university, industry, and government. So this kind of model is something which is really missing at our level. So institutional reform, maybe we can begin with ICAR, where institutional reforms, rather than going more for the scorecard-based kind of assessments, if we could have this kind of assessment that how we are able to develop the technologies which are relevant for the farmers, directly relevant for the farmers. So that is one part. Second is, like, I would say, the agility of the clearance mechanism. We have single window system for various schemes now, but for the registration processes, sometimes the processes are very slow. So the institutional reforms should make the institutions or say ease of doing business. That is something which is very important in agriculture. And then just one more point, I would say that engagement, more and more engagement of the agriculture in science and technology. Like for example, if I draw from experience from India, EU, so we have a lot of bilateral arrangements. We have also multilateral engagements with EU. Science and technology cooperation is there. But the recent report shows that most of this cooperation is towards ICT, energy, health. And agriculture sector is something which is by and large not there. So even in the India-EU Horizon programs, we see that agriculture and food systems is something which is more of a neglected area. So what I would say, reforms required there, what are the reforms which are required there? You see, the agriculture professionals, whenever we have joint working groups and everything, it's all manned by, I would say it is all led by the bureaucrats and not really the technocrats. So I think I would suggest that is institutional reform which is required if we want to mainstream the way that happens in other countries, if we want to really take advantage of faster diffusion of technology through partnerships.
Very much. Thank you. So Dr. Satya Sai, you have rich experience in rural and agri-financing. So in this context, how can these financial institutions integrate better risk management tools to support farmers and agri-enterprises as value chains become more market and technology driven?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, risk is a very important parameter that all of us are concerned, especially bankers. I'll make 5 statements to be brief. One is we need to have better exchange of information. That is, whether through digitization, whatever we do, I think we need, bankers should know their clients better and clients should know their bankers better. This is one thing. Second thing is the strategies to share risk and spread risk are very important. Maybe leveraging bulk lending, maybe through FPOs or processors or supermarkets. I think thereby, I think bankers can reduce the risk. And other one, there is another mechanism available, credit guarantee mechanism. So through this, I think the risk can be managed a lot. And this is a sort of insurance type of mechanism where bankers are encouraged to lend to the vulnerable sections and claim against any default. And that is the risk at farmers levels or enterprise levels is very important because they affect the bank also directly and then society at large. I think insurance of all sorts, I think we should make the insurance products penetrate, whatever may be insurance type, both life and non-life. I think that would mitigate the risk to a large extent, to help us to manage risk to a large extent. These are the, and then apart from this disaster management, etc., all those things should be there to help the overall ecosystem to reduce the risk for individual players. I think these are the quick things.
Thank you very much. Professor Najir, Jammu and Kashmir is emerging as a developing innovative value chains, and your rich experience in this will be highly beneficial to see that how we can integrate it with the national level. So the question is, how can mountain agriculture be more effectively integrated into national value chains while safeguarding sustainability and local livelihoods?
Thank you, sir, for this very important question. As said, that the agriculture in the mountains is very unique. Those are the niche crops. Majority of the crops which we produce are GI-tagged, they are of high quality, and those which are otherwise available here in the mainland are off-season there, and then those natural and organic. But then unfortunately, we are not integrated with those national value chain systems. And therefore, we need to just see that how do we do it. And then because for building those value chains, we need to have huge volumes available, but then the land available is there. So therefore, we must focus on high value and low volume kind of the value chains and that will increase the profitability of the farmers. The second important challenge is the land fragmentation. Our land holding capacity is much lower in Himalayas or in mountains than in mainlands. If it is 1 hectare here, 1.1, it is less than 0.4 hectares there in Jammu and Kashmir or in Himalayas. So therefore, that approach of aggregation and FPOs and cooperatives is something very important. And then connecting the market access is something very, very important for us. For example, this year, sir, when we were just marketing the apple produce was a tremendous loss to the farmers. But then now people are doing it in a private partnership mode. Those cold chains are coming up and those C stores especially. And logistics is something very, very important which can help us in connecting with the national markets at the right time. And then those digital platforms of connecting nationally and globally. And as far as sustainability is concerned, that's something very, very important for the Himalayan regions. We have to have those climate smart kind of agricultural practices, the regenerative agricultural practices. And we are also going for diversification of our crops, rather than having those manufacturing only. And of course, we need to just see that how do we make those those communities to pay for those ecosystem services, because at same time, they are also helping us in preserving the biodiversity, water resources, and in this carbon sequestration. So I believe that is a very big topic. But then, fortunately, at the state level or at the UT level, we are in this process of connecting our value chains with the national value chains, and of course, also going for international markets. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Srinivas, you have very rich experience of connecting various actors in developing agri-entrepreneurship, and based on your experience, what do you suggest? What kind of partnerships between government, incubators, financial institutions, and industry are most effective in strengthening startup-led innovations in agri-value chains?
Thank you, sir, for this question, and I was anticipating this question. That's why I started scribbling along. In fact, what I feel is the most important thing which is required in investment in human capabilities and upskilling. That is the one which is required for different players in the value chain, as well as the players who are regulators or who are giving a sort of investment issues, that what is happening in this. Second important thing, in from the school to college, everywhere, we need to start a financial literacy for all. That is one thing, because this is the very, very important aspect, and we do not understand what is happening in the scenario. And a bit of financial literacy and understanding how the profits and the losses happen and all those things. In co-creation, which we talked about, we require to increase our capability, especially sharing the financial burdens, how to share the IP benefits. That is again an important aspect in the whole scenario. The most important thing in this thing is we have to work in a mission mode, in a team. And the final thing which I wanted to talk, which Satyasai has also told in a different way, we need to have a mechanism for risk transfer, especially in better supply chains for inputs, as well as during the production and post-production. We need to have a better mechanism for risk transfer. You may call it an insurance, you may call it some other things like that. This is what I wanted to say at this point, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One question for you. Very briefly, you have given a very wonderful presentation. From a global perspective, you have rich experience in this one. What policies could help rural households build resilience as food systems face rapid technological, market, and climate-related institutions?
So I think there is a common theme, whether we've been discussing more the production side or the consumption side. It's about layering, right? It's about layering and bundling instruments. The speaker just before me spoke about risk transfers, right? And for agricultural households and for people in the rural space, I think what we see is that we need a core sort of set of programs that provide a floor under which people cannot fall, right? And these are going to be financed out of general taxations. And then we need instruments that can be contributory with incentives and subsidies for those that are the smallest landholders or the vulnerable farmers, maybe the female farm workers, to manage some of the production risks and to manage the sort of household and individual level risk like health, right? We know that people will divest if there is a health shock. So the bundling of financial and risk management products and the flexibility, because in a very risky environment such as agricultural production, you will need to, the farmer or the household or the worker will need to, maybe they were saving for one thing, but they will need to use these funds for another thing. This flexibility is key to enable them to bounce back after shocks. So the structuring of this these risk management instruments from basic savings account to accounts that enable them to shift products requires a thinking along the full sort of risk management value chain in a sense. And the hard financing questions about who pays for what from the government side, between the central government and the local ones, from the worker and household sides, and also from the aggregators, right? In several of you mentioned the platforms and the aggregators. We have the same on the social protection side. How do we manage contributions and corporations in those environments? And they are sort of, countries are experimenting. This is a very sort of innovative field at the moment. And I think there is some experience building at the international level that India can also greatly contribute to. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have excellent points from the panelists. So we can have one or two brilliant ideas on transforming agri-value chain. Not question answer, questions you can raise during the lunchtime with the panelists. But if you have some brilliant idea on how value chain transformation is happening somewhere, you can share. Only one or two? No? All are hungry to our own value chain. Food security. Okay, so friends, yeah, please. Briefly.
Now, India is a surplus country with respect to everything, fruits, food and vegetables. Until unless the infrastructure is created in rural area with easy system, the food processing and the value chain will not develop.
Good, thank you, thank you, thank you. So friends, I have honor to invite Dr. G. Naren Kumar, who is the Director General of National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. He is a senior Indian Administrative Service Officer with more than 35 years of diverse leadership in development, administration, governance, innovation, and institutional transformation. Currently, he is serving as Director General of National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, where he leads India's premier think tank on decentralized governance and rural policy. His work spans the intersection of policy, systems thinking, and lifelong learning. He has collaborated extensively with national governments, multilateral agencies, and civil society organizations to shape policies that are both people-centric and future-ready. So, Dr. Naresh.
Thank you, respected chairs, dignitaries on the dais, participants in this very important policy dialogue. I say that this is a very important policy dialogue today because we are on the anvil of launching a new program in the Ministry of Rural Development on rural prosperity and rural resilience. So learnings from a policy dialogue can be good enablers in taking that program forward. We have a rough blueprint of how we can configure that and try to present that very briefly. And in that process, I'll reflect upon some of the things which our panelists have spoken about, starting with the presentation made by Mamta on the structural transformation. Two models, the Lewis model and the Schultz model. The Schultz model focusing on the institutions, on the capabilities, and so on, to be able to raise productivity. That's what we summarize. And we all know the Lewis model of structural transformation. So I think when looking at the rural prosperity program, we are broadly looking at the structural transformation. So one of the things that we see from an implementation point of view is that we have almost about 90 lakh self-help groups in this country, about 10 crore women associated with that. Very well structured, good federated structure. And most important thing in that are the capabilities which have been built over 20 years. A lot of social empowerment has taken place, no doubt about that. Women who would not step out of their houses are now coming to the group meetings. They participate in lending decisions so that the consumption finance which is spoken of, that's substantially taken care of. But the question that we still beg to answer is this: has this been able to contribute substantially to poverty reduction? Has that been able to promote prosperity very substantively? That's a very important question. And on the basis of field evidence and experiences that we see, because in the National Rural Development, we run close to about 2,000 programs, interacting almost every day with field level participants. We don't see such a strong movement from this program, this large program, towards promoting rural prosperity. The lending has become better. People depending upon the money lenders, that has come down, though not fully. Therefore, I would say that look, capabilities here we have built, institutions we've built, but not so much increase in productivity, not so much increase in prosperity. So there's something else which is needed to really bring about the structural transformation. What is that? Some sort of a coordinated production needs to be taken care of. So attempts were made in the past in developing. There was such kind of a program. There was an integrated rural development program which ran in the 1980s and 90s, subsequently phased out because of its failure. Maybe it was too far ahead of its time. It tried to promote self-employment enterprises, had good shelf of projects, and so on and so forth, but was not able to build the capabilities. People were not prepared at that point in time. But that perhaps still continues to be the way forward to be able to look at rural prosperity. And why should we look at rural prosperity? That's something very important when we're talking about Viksit Bharat. Where is the potential towards Viksit Bharat? Where is the potential to become a developed country. Substantially, the potential is in the rural areas. For the simple reason, they're way down below. When something is way down below, to be able to pull it up, the potential is much more compared to an urban areas, where they're more or less sort of self-propelled, self-driven, not much intervention is needed, they take care of themselves. So therefore, we need to look at it. So other point that Mamta was mentioning in the presentation, the value chain, that how do we link the producers with the consumers? How do we develop this entire value chain in an integrated manner, which is challenging as it is, and we need to look at it. And I think there are challenges, but not that kind of insurmountable challenges. There are challenges which we are able to meet, and we are moving forward with that. One important challenge is with respect to the marketing system that she was talking about, 5Ps and so on. So that still continues to be a major challenge. That unless we have good marketing support for the micro enterprises which function in the rural areas, then we will succeed. And that in many discussions with parliamentarians and others, the point out to say the weakest link in this whole system of developing micro enterprises is the marketing setup and supply chain systems that Dr. Srinivas was talking about. Those things we need to, I think, very substantively take care of. Another key element which was spoken about, Beatrice, when she was speaking about, that we should be looking at some sort of an area-based approach. What does that area-based approach mean to us in terms of successes, in terms of the best practices that we see? Best practices world over where such rural micro enterprises have come up and played a catalytic and transformative role, such as in China, Japan, and so on. Typically, the area-based development approach is a cluster-based approach. So what is that cluster? That is open to discussion, whether it should be at the district level, panchayat level, village level, and so on. We need to be a little more granular about this because we have a one district, one product program. But a district seems to be too broad, too big to talk about one product for the entire district. It's too large a geographical entity. Compared to that, Japan, even in the 1950s, spoke about one village, one product. We're still to get there. I think we need to get there. We need to think about it. I mean, these are international practices which have been there, which have been well curated, which have served their purpose well. So I think we need to therefore look at these clusters, as someone was mentioning, in a more flexible approach. What should be a cluster? It could be a panchayat, it could be a block, district. Depending upon the potential, we need to develop the productive entities in clusters. Reason being that, look, once we have a cluster, we can focus on that particular cluster. It could be a tobacco cluster, it could be a chilies cluster, it could be a moringa cluster. Whatever we take up is possible to develop that value chain systematically and scientifically. That simple logical development, I think we've not still been able to put things together. We need to focus on a cluster-based development of products and at an appropriate level. That's something that we need to look at. Institutional arrangements was something, again, Beatrice was speaking about. We have reasonable institutional arrangements, as I was talking about. Self-help groups, 90 lakhs of them. Panchayat Raj institutions, more than 2.5 lakhs of them. We have the FPOs, very large number, but many of them are not strong, including the FPOs, micro enterprises of self-help groups. They're not doing well. One of the key lacks in these is the lack of capabilities and capacities, managerial capabilities and capacities. That's something that I think we need to reinforce, build very substantively to be able to strengthen these institutions. Another aspect, time and again, been mentioned by Mr. Sai and others, Mr. Srinivas and others, is yes, that the government has now, in a way, come up to say that, look, we have these 90 lakh self-help groups, and many of them are not developing themselves into businesses, into enterprises, and therefore we need to have a big program, and that's how they came up with the Lakpati Didi initiative, to say suddenly that we will develop 3 crore micro enterprises, which is a huge, huge challenge to say that all of a sudden we develop 3 crore micro enterprises, vibrant, successful, and economically viable. That's a very key challenge, and one of the key aspects in making those this large number of micro enterprises successful, other than understanding the conceptual underpinnings of having a cluster-based approach, one product for each cluster, and so on, is the financing aspect. How are we going to tie up the finances? I think that question still goes begging. We need to answer this correctly, clearly, to say that, look, how are these micro enterprises going to be financed? So what models would be there? Would there be a franchising model by bigger producer entities? Would there be contracting model? Would there be financing coming from the banks and so on and so forth? I think this question is one very important aspect which needs to be answered very clearly and correctly. And another key aspect, again, it was mentioning about, nutrition sensitivity, dealing with aging issues, and so on and so forth. So one of the key focus areas, we need to, I think, clearly define what we want to do in the rural prosperity, in the rural areas. So we need to understand what's happening in the rural areas. Look at it, someone was talking about infrastructure. I mean, I've been in the Indian Administrative Service now more than 36 years. When we came into the service, rural areas were very far-flung areas, very remote areas, inaccessible areas, and so on. That's not the situation today. Almost every village of this country is connected with good quality motorable roads, thanks to the Prime Minister's Gram Sadak project. Not to say that every village is connected, but most of the villages, 90 to 95%, electricity supply is there. We are now moving to universal drinking water supply. The basics are being provided. But our thinking and our mindset hasn't changed. We still want to think about urban and rural. But the reality is today we have a rural-urban continuum, and we need to brace for that. We need to plan proactively for that. That's an important change we need to bring about. So to say that, look, we have good quality roads, but we don't have good quality transport on those roads, easily accessible to the rural folk, to the farmers, and so on, to be able to move things into the villages and move things out. So how do we connect these dots? That's something to look at very substantively, to be able to make good use of the existing connectivity. So that's something, therefore, we need to understand that the connectivity is there. Now we need to start planning differently. So when we're talking about the transformation of the rural areas, I think we're looking at 3 layers of transformation. One is how can we maximize income for the farmers, and a concept of manner of thinking, doubling of income for the farmers. Second, as one of our friends was mentioning, that look, infrastructure is there, but do we have the right kind of infrastructure to make agriculture productive, to be able to get maximum yield out of it, such as common processing facilities, such as marketing, supply chain networks, and so on? Are we focusing deliberately on developing this kind of infrastructure? That's something that we're beginning to do with the self-help groups at the cluster level federation, to speak about having common processing facilities developed there. Supply chain is something that we're looking at, to say that, look, we're encouraging states to come up with their own marketing agencies, such as one which exists in Odisha, and so on. So those are the changes I think we need to do, because basically we need to make agriculture more valuable, as we understand. And one of the key things in that journey and in that process is to move people out of agriculture. As you know, unless we move the excessive number of people in agriculture, agriculture would not be remunerated. So how do we bring about this transformation, not only for farmers, but for others in this country? I think we have a very great potential to be able to make this important scheme and program successful, and many of the existing programs can be merged, can be brought into under this umbrella, then we can succeed. Assuming that we're able to do well in this, but still the important questions which go begging are the issues of market failures. How do we ensure that, look, there would be micro enterprises? How do we ensure that the ultra poor, who are much dwindling in number, how do they benefit from these initiatives? How do we ensure that we are primarily looking at the self-help groups based kind of micro enterprise development? How do we see that others also come up with those micro enterprises? And how do we build resilience? We have a rough blueprint on how to make this happen, but not so much focused on making these enterprises resilient. So that's, I think, some work we need to do on the market failures. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, friends. Now we move to next item. I have to share some of my own views, and then I will request Dr. Mahendra. So the panel discussion was excellent panel discussion. Important points emerged from this discussion, and we understand that the existing supply chains are very inefficient in India. They are unorganized, they are fragmented, and several actors are in between producer as well as consumer, and these actors are not adding any value. They are adding only cost and the wastage, and therefore the transaction costs are very high and the wastages are high, and therefore our Indian agriculture becomes inefficient. Although in production, but in marketing they are inefficient because of this, the entire inefficient and fragmented supply chains. But during the last 15, 20 years, the supply chains are transforming, and we can see that innovations in marketing is emerging, and it started with ENAM. ENAM is and the second is we witness even after the COVID, direct and digital marketing is there, e-retailing is emerging. You have, these big e-retailers like Amazon, retail, the Reliance, the Cash, Big Bazaar, Big Basket. So these e-marketing is coming up, and also retail chains, the organized retail chains are emerging, which are directly procuring from the farmers. So a big change is emerging, but the process is not as fast as we expect. We cannot generalize value chain transformation because we have different kinds of commodities. So we need to see that how the value chains or supply chains will uh, transform or unfold with the commodity. For example, it is dominant, the rice and wheat. These are the two commodities which are dominated by the public sector. So the supply chain here is highly subsidized, huge subsidies there from producer to consumer. Although the actor is only government, in between the actor is only government, but the cost is very, very high. So this is one component of the one part of the commodity. Second is the private sector. Private sector, especially coming up in the perishable commodities. So the supply chain innovations will be a different forms depending upon the commodity. So here again, especially fruits and vegetables, the informal supply chains are dominating, but the formal supply chains are also emerging through farmer producer organizations. Then the contract farming is emerging in a big way, where the states have changed their APMC laws, as well as cooperatives. New after having the cooperative ministry, so the cooperatives are also coming up. Then industry, the products which are being used by industry, especially the poultry sector, the value chain is completely different. Maize, for example, the commodity which is being used by the industry for poultry, ethanol, and also processed commodities. So their value chain transformation will be entirely different. And then niche commodities like in Jammu Kashmir, they have a very high value commodities, saffron, for example, cherry. So these are the very, very high value commodities. Their value chains are different, and their exporters are involved in the process. So the value chain, I will suggest that it should not be generalized. The processes and the programs should be completely different from, and it should be driven by the commodity. And then the conditions for successes, I will suggest that one is the important one is the partnership, especially the public-private partnership is very, very important. Second, institutional reforms, which I think government is initiating various kinds of programs like FPOs, contract farming. I think that the contract farming is the solution for improving the value chains. And infrastructure, as was mentioned, that infrastructure is very, very important. Cold storage, road networks, and the logistics, transport, everything is very important. And unless we have those, the supply chains will not be efficient. And this supply chain financing, again, this is important. And then risk is again is high risk is there, so that needs to be considered. So these are the few points I wish to share with you based on our discussion. So now I will again my honor to invite Professor Mahendra Deo. Mahendra Deo, you know that he is present the chairman of the Advisory Council to the Prime. He was earlier director and vice chancellor of Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai for during 2010 to 2022. Prior to this, he was the chairman of the Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, CACP, Ministry of Agriculture. And he was also the vice chair. I'm very happy that working with him, the vice chair of the board of trustees of International Food Policy Research Institute, Washington, D.C. He is also heading, I don't know now, he was heading or member of various boards, banking sector, and many committees at the national and international. We welcome you and thank you very much for accepting our request to have this panel discussion. So I will invite you to share your views.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. Actually, I'll be speaking in the valedictory some of these issues. So I'll be brief on this, particularly on structural transformation and those things. I'll be speaking, putting the agriculture in the Indian economy context and also the shifting the population to manufacturing and services, those issues. On the agriculture value chains, of course, already a lot of discussion has been we've been having. I think as Dr. Mamta mentioned, the fundamental approach and the human capital approach are very important for this innovations and for agri and also revolutions. She mentioned the retail and other revolutions. In fact, Thomas Reading and all, they've done a lot of work on this agri value chains. They think a lot of progress has been made, as Dr. Joshi mentioned, but some more work has to be done. This also depends on the commodity, which, for example, we all know this Amul is a very successful one in milk cooperatives. The value chain is, and also how much the farmers getting out of the price, out of this, this agri value chain. I mean, the consumer price. For example, milk, you get almost 75–80% of the consumer price, whereas other commodities, how much they are getting, farmers' income, because that's very important for, the success of the value chains. And we have already discussed the, finance is an important thing, because still I checked in several places, still they are getting many of the MSMEs or the other groups still getting from the money lenders. So how do we scale, get the formal finance to them is very important. And several institutions we've been talking about. In fact, one institution also I'll talk in my lecture is the cooperatives, because the cooperatives also, the government is now pushing on cooperatives, apart from FPOs, self-help groups. Of course, self-help groups, there are success stories and also need for improvement. For example, in recent Bihar, Jivika, a lot of success it seems happened. And so the institutions are more important to strengthen them. And FPOs, of course, it's a mixed one. Some are doing well and some are not doing well. And of course, the nutrition related things also important. I'll also talk in my in the address later. what are the changes happening in the consumption patterns of even in rural areas, significant changes there. And of course, the climate resilience is important, how the crops we are going to have an impact on value chains. And lastly, the digital the revolution is happening in India, and how can we use this to strengthen the agriculture value chains is equally important, including AI, because that gives a lot of information and other things. So with this, I thank once again for inviting me here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now I request Dr. Anjani to give a vote of thanks. Vote of thanks.
Sir, in one go, we thank all the distinguished chair, co-chair, and panelists for a wonderful session. We are running behind the schedule, and that's why we want to conserve some time for the valedictory session also. And with this, I request President AERA to felicitate the chief guest and chair, Professor Mahendra Dev, on this occasion. Director ICAR-NAARM, Dr. Gopal Lal sir, also is requested to felicitate the chief guest of the day, and Secretary AERA, Dr. Anjani. I request the dignitaries to honor Dr. G. Narendra Kumar, Director General, National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. We are grateful to have Ms. Benedict Dalla Breyer. I request the President AERA to felicitate Ms. Benedict. I request the dignitaries to felicitate Professor Nazir Ahmad Ghani, Vice Chancellor, Sher-e-Kashmir University of Agriculture and Technology. Yes, sir. And I request Director to give felicitate Professor Mamta Pradhan. We'll break for lunch and we'll reassemble for valedictory session in the conference hall of ICAR-NAARM, just besides this auditorium. We'll guide while you come back. Valedictory session will start from 3:15 p.m. sharp. Thank you. Yes, venue announced, sir. Venue for valedictory session will be conference hall, not the auditorium.